So hello everyone, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be looking at the patch notes and how I think they will affect the state of the game. Then we're going to have a little discussion about the state of the game itself and my thoughts on the current meta and my thoughts just generally on meta itself. And yeah, we're going to move forward from there. So previously my channel was about builds and interesting things that maybe other people hadn't spotted. I quickly ran out of ideas. I realized I didn't have that many builds that I could sort of really talk to in length. So I refocused the channel to guides, and I did notice that there were not too many basic guides out there. So that's what we've been doing recently. So we're going to have a little chat about my channel thoughts as well, about where we're going to progress. And yeah, let's get on with it. So let's jump right in and look at what changes each profession might have this patch. Elementalist. Ellie took a small hit this patch. We've got a few little buffs here and there. I mean, Arc Lightning, a few things. Buffing the Scepter or whatever. But you get down to this point, and this is the absolute ballbuster for Elementalists. Meteor Shower. This skill now has a 0.5 second cooldown when hitting non-player targets. This is huge. This could affect the Ellie's DPS by a staggering quantity. I'll be curious to actually get in game and try it, but this is a real bad change for the Ellie. Ellie was in a very good place before, so I feel that it probably did deserve a nerf. We've also got another nerf down here, which is also worth mentioning. Overload Air has been reduced by 7% as well, so a little bit of a damage hit for Ellie, and a few sort of inconsequential buffs is where Ellie's at. Engineers received a few little small buffs. We've got some completely unnecessary buffs, like this one, adding bleed to a power-based weapon. Well, thanks very much for that. Fragmentation shot. This will aid in Condi builds. Bleeding duration is increased from 3 to 4 seconds. So this might mean that instead of auto-attacking on the grenades, you auto-attack with a pistol instead. I don't know how the numbers work there, so like somebody with a spreadsheet, probably in QT, will work out whether that's actually worth using, but we have a few more little buffs down here as well. Flame Jet. So we've got a little bit of burn added to the basic flamethrower kit, but again, probably won't use it. This is interesting though. Bit of burn damage on Flame Blast and Detonate Flame Blast. So this was a very useful skill for like bursting, blasting water fields and stuff like that. Now you'll be doing burn instead of power damage, which is the way it should have been in the first place. So a little bit of a buff to engineer Condi build. Guardian. Very interesting changes for Guardian, or at least interesting to me. What they seem to be doing is they're trying to move the damage Guardian onto the Greatsword. So what do we have? We've got Whirling Wrath. Reduce the cooldown from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. This is a high damaging skill on Greatsword. The damage has been increased by 20%. And we also have Leap of Faith. Been reduced from 15 to 12 seconds. These are both high damage abilities. And then Symbol of Wrath as well has been increased. So we've got 3 abilities on the Greatsword that have been increased. Shifting the damage spec on Guardian probably to Greatsword. Although I would imagine it probably doesn't still put out as much as the damage professions in the game. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Mesmer. Couple of changes to the way quickness works for this profession. I think actually getting my head around this, it's going to be worse than it was before. So Time Warp. The interval of quickness and slow. The skill has been increased from 1 second to 2 seconds. Quickness and slow duration have been increased. So there was a problem before where Time Warp quickness was overwriting the quickness of other spells. And the duration being 1 second meant that the quickness would overwrite it, and you'd end up with less quickness when you use Time Warp. So that's why Time Warp was abandoned by the community. The thing is, they haven't really solved the problem. So they've even upped the quickness you get from the Well of Action. So this is just going to generally help your quickness generation no matter what. From 3 seconds to 4 seconds. But this, and Time Warp, is now going to affect 10 targets. So in a raid scenario, your Time Warp could overwrite the other Mesmer's quickness. This seems totally broken to me, but difficult to talk about the Mesmer and quickness generation on day one. Somebody a lot smarter than me behind the scenes will have, will work out what's worth using here, but those are my initial thoughts on Mesmer.
Necromancer.
It would seem that ArenaNet want power necros to be a thing because they have upped the power on a number of skills across the board. So, Gravedigger, the aftercast of this skill has been reduced by 0.2 seconds. This might not seem like a lot, but if you're thumping a boss repeatedly with Gravedigger, one after another, and you're having to put up with this 0.2 of a second aftercast, that actually is going to start adding up after a while. So, nice little buff to Gravedigger there. And then we've got another buff to Greatsword here. The damage of this skill is Death Spiral. The damage of this skill has been increased by 20%. A nice little buff there. And then we've got a few changes down here. Some changes to Reaper Shroud, actually. This is the auto attack in Reaper Shroud. And that is considerably stronger. And that Life Force generation is particularly nice as well. So we've got a nice couple. We have a nice couple of changes to Necromancer power damage. I'm disappointed they didn't touch Condi damage in this patch, but I guess you can't have everything. I wonder if this will be competitive. I doubt it, actually, looking at it, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe that Gravedigger change will be enough, and a few of the other things have been changed as well. So nice little buffs to Necromancer.
Pew pew. I mean, Ranger.
So a couple of changes for the Ranger as well. So things to highlight here: sharpened edges. I don't actually play Condi Ranger, but I understand it's quite good condition damage for how easy it is to actually play. This seems like a considerable nerf, so we'll see how that actually affects the DPS. This is interesting. Grace of the Land stacks have been reduced from 3 to 2. The number of targets affected by this trait has increased from 5 to 10. So, Grace of the Line stacks are +% damage, so you'll get 2% damage per stack now, but every druid in the party can proc these Grace of the Land stacks. The problem is, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make the idea of only taking one druid viable, but they've changed Grace of the Land, but Frost Spirit and the glyph that increases damage as well, those two are both enormous damage boosts that the druid provides while it's healing. So leaving those on 5 targets and changing that to 10 targets seems arbitrary, and it doesn't really achieve much in my mind. If anything, it might actually just slightly buff the damage of most groups, because it's going to be easier for 2 druids to keep Grace of the Land stacks on people than just 1. So there's that. Nice little buffs there. Natural Convergence. This skill will provide Grace of the Land stacks on every pulse when the trait is equipped. So the idea to make Grace of the Land just slightly easier to apply, and then you're applying it to all 10 people. So that's just, I think it's going to buff groups a little bit. But people will still have to bring 2 druids because of the other damage buffs, which is a bit silly. And then we've got some AI buffs to some pets, which honestly I'll believe when I see, because I've been promised AI upgrades to Ranger pets in the past, and it's always been so sad. But anyway, let's move on.
Revenant.
Oh, this whole section I'm excited about. It probably isn't going to change most people's lives, because, okay, so what they've done is they've made Alacrity available through the Salvation specialization line, allowing Ventari's tablet to project it at a constant rate. So they want the idea of another profession, i.e. the Revenant, to be the one that generates alacrity. And it's not really going to work. And the reason I think it's not going to work is because the Mesmer has to be in the party to provide quickness anyway, and alacrity can just almost be done sort of accidentally by the Mesmer. On top of this, the Revenant would be forced to stay in Ventari the entire time, meaning if you want to make an alacrity Revenant, it also kind of has to be a healer Revenant as well. So the reason I like this is because I foresee a build that I might be able to make, which could be a lot of fun in like fractals and stuff like that. Nothing for raids, but I can imagine something I can make here that is a healer and someone who gives alacrity as well, particularly for fractals, because alacrity is not a buff, and there's a high level mislock singularity, I can't say that word right, which removes boons from your party, and alacrity is not a boon. So doing healing and I can see some use there. It's just disappointing that they've tied it to Ventari, because healing is pretty much the only thing you can do when you're in Ventari. So the rest of the changes are kind of, not particularly interesting, but there's some stuff here that, this could be a potential build video, but we'll see.
Thief.
A single mention for thief in these patch notes I am interested in, and it's this sentence here. This skill is now affected by quickness, and it's to do with the vault, and that's the number 5 skill on the staff. So this does a lot of damage, and it flips over and it lands, and it does a lot of damage. Currently, because it's not affected by quickness, it's more efficient to just auto attack. We'll see how this affects the Daredevil damage. It could increase the Daredevil's damage, at which point I have a feeling the Daredevil might be comparable with the Ellie in terms of what it actually puts out. But not sure how much this will do. I guess I'll find out when I start wailing on the target dummy.
Warrior.
Few things worth mentioning here. Firstly, Condi PSs will be happy that the skill has changed. For Great Justice, the might granted by the skill has been increased from 3 to 6 stacks. I literally just finished making my Condi Warrior, so I'm happy with this because it's going to make might generation just a little bit easier. Blood Reckoning, this is for the power Phalanx Strength Warrior. The amount healed by the skill is increased from 10% to 20%, so this is part of your normal rotation, and this is going to keep you alive a lot better, so that's really good. The thing that has changed for Warrior, and this actually, of all the things in these patch notes, could be the thing that legitimately can change the meta. Banner of Defense, Banner of Discipline, Banner of Strength, Banner of Tactics have increased their number of targets from 5 to 10. So what does this mean? Essentially, to get all the banner advantages, you only need one Warrior. So currently, you bring Warrior for the banners, you bring Warrior for the might generation. If you can might generate on another profession, as well as a Phalanx Strength, then you only need one Warrior. And I can see this potentially being a thing. So this could pan out well for adding another profession in place of the second Phalanx Strength Warrior in raids. So we'll see how that works out. So let's talk a little bit about the meta. I want to preface this by saying this is probably the most controversial thing I will discuss about the game, because my opinions are not exactly mainstream on this. So we have a very enforced meta in the game. We have damage Ellies, we have healing druids, we have quickness generating Mesmers, and we have might generating warriors, and I think it's good. I think it's a very nice setup for raids. Now, why have I prefaced what I just said, or suffixed, I should say, what I just said with 4 raids? Well, raids is a very specific niche case, and I kind of view the game split up into two halves. Currently, I do a lot of fractals, I do a lot of raids. The open world, I'm not going to really talk about too much, but I would sort of lump that in with fractals. Fractals is hard-ish. Like tier 4 fractals can be hard, and raids is hard. The difference between fractals and raids is very specific, and it's that... Well, I mean, it's twofold. Firstly, raids have a timer. That is something that causes you to need to optimize your play enormously. Fractals do not have a timer. Perhaps I'll put some sort of graphic up on the screen to sort of track this conversation. Secondly, the mechanics in raids are very clearly visible. So, most people who have done any sort of raid will have tried, for example, the first boss, Veil Guardian. And in Veil Guardian, there are these blue circles that appear, and a second and a half later, you get teleported away, and this causes trouble for your group. Now, this is a very recognizable mechanic. You see the blue circles, you move out of the blue circle, and then you don't get teleported. Everyone who starts with Veil Guardian, that's one of the first things you learn, is to not get teleported by the blue circles. You know that they're gonna pop about 1.5 seconds after they appear, so you can avoid them. Fractals, however, are very different. So I'm actually gonna put some footage up, like, while I'm chatting about this.
That's much too early. Prepare to fast forward!
Preparing to fast forward.
Fast forward!
Fast forwarding, sir.
So I've come to the Chaos Fractal on an Elementalist, particularly squishy class, to demonstrate that some damage in Fractals is just basically unavoidable. You cannot possibly outplay it. I'm even running a slightly more defensive build. I have Armor of the Earth and Arcane Shield on my bar. And in a minute, we're just going to get to a point where we're going to slow down the footage to 100%. And I'm casting Meteor Shower. And I move to the left and I notice an AoE. And then I dodge through it and I instantly go down. Boom. Down. So let's see that again in slow motion. And I'm actually going to freeze frame it the second I get hit. So what is hitting me here? Like, this is completely unavoidable damage. Like, it would be nigh on impossible to have worked out in advance and actually outplayed it. And yet this one-shots me and immediately puts me into the down state. So I actually do happen to get straight back up again because something died, but this sort of thing happens a lot. And if it happens to too many people at the same time, then you can end up with a failed fractal for, like, basically no reason. And it really opens the door in my mind to slightly more defensive builds for individuals. So I'm not going to dwell on these changes too much. I'm just going to mention each change I might make and for what reason. So first of all, I have Marauder's Gear with the Rune of the Worm. This is what I run in Fractals. And you see over here, I actually have a full set of Berserkers with Scholar in case I ever raid on Guardian. So I have one set for raids, I have one set for Fractals. This by itself enormously increases my survivability. Some of you might be familiar with this build as I have mentioned it in my basic Guardian guide, and also I have the actual build video itself. So I'm not going to focus on it too much. I'm just going to gloss over it, and I'm going to talk about some of the trait changes you can make to really help your team. So currently I have like a basic Guardian damage setup, and for example, the Underwater Fractal. I've seen this go wrong quite a few times because the octopus at the end, if you're familiar with the Fractal, spawns a lot of little small octopi, or jellyfish rather. And those jellyfish each apply conditions every single time they hit. And they do that because of the Mistlock Singularity. It's a tricky thing to say. Where every hit an enemy does gives a condition. So, in that particular fractal, I decide to run Pure of Voice. Allies affected by shouts have conditions converted to boons. Shout abilities have their recharge reduced. So, Then I might run another shout here instead of the signet. Speaking of the signet, this is something I run some of the time, minus 10% incoming damage. That just generally makes me a lot easier, you know, a lot tougher in certain situations. So if the fractal's tough, I'll use that instead of the power boost. So there's another change you can make pretty quickly. Also, if you're super having trouble with staying alive, you can also use renewed focus. And like renewed focus also regenerates your F abilities. So if you need lots of healing, you can F2, renewed focus, and then F2 again. I also use receive the light instead of shelter or any of the other heals because I can actively heal my party up with this ability. These are some changes you can make to just, like, to the basic Guardian, just to make it better in different circumstances. And if you're rigidly sticking to just the best damage your class can have, then all these little side benefits you can make for yourself get thrown out the window. And in Fractals, staying alive and completing is what matters. In raids, completing in a certain amount of time is what matters. So I fully accept the meta, and this is why, you know, I sort of prefaced the whole argument by saying a little bit controversial, because I only agree with the meta in raids where there is a timer. The meta, I mean, you should go for something close, so you can still put out decent damage, or if you're in Druid, you know, put out some decent heals. But yeah, I don't know why I picked Druid out randomly, but if you're any other profession, basically do what the profession does well. But look for these little changes that you can make. You know, look for the traits that you can change out that help your group in certain circumstances. Because I guarantee you this will smooth your play over in Fractals. I just want to finish this little discussion about the meta by proposing something about 5-man groups. So you go into Fractals, and if you're running meta, you're looking at 3 damage professions, maybe 1 party buffer, and 1 healer. And this is an accepted meta party. And it struck me that your balance there is 60% damage, 20% party boons, and 20% heal. Does it really matter if that party balance is achieved that particular way? For example, if I was to take a profession in the game and make 60% damage, 20% party buffing, and like 20% team healing on a single character, and then 4 other people to do exactly the same thing, you'd end up with a party that does almost identical, but they'd be nowhere near the meta builds. So, is there really a difference between having a party spread of utility and having an individual spread of utility? So, just something to think about when you're lying awake, long nights. So I wanted to finish this video by just having a little discussion about the channel that I'm slowly building up here. It's doing a lot better than I thought it would. I get a few new subscribers every day. This number here is rising very slightly, you know, 568 now. I think I'm going to re-examine the channel a bit when I get to 1,000. But for now, I just wanted to have a quick chat. Just say, look, I'm working on the basic guides. I'm obviously not producing videos that fast. I wanted to sort of do a patch notes video today, just to sort of, you know, maybe up my game a bit, you know. I'm also moving at the moment, which is a long process, it turns out. So I'm, you know, a little bit busy, but I will be completing the basic guide video series, and then maybe I'll do some other videos someone suggested. Some things like in comment section. Please tell me in the comment section below, actually, if there's any particular videos you feel that just aren't represented in the community of Guild Wars on YouTube, and maybe I can fill in that gap, which is what I've tried to do with these basic guides. Maybe I'll do a video, you know, entitled "What is Raids?" Baby, don't hurt me. That's just generally about, you know, raids. Maybe I'll do a boss guide on each one. I am familiar with all the raid bosses. It doesn't mean I'm perfect at them all, but I can certainly explain the mechanics of those. So if people are interested in raid guides, let me know, as I said, in the comments below. And just generally, if you have any ideas, let me know. So that's about it. And thanks for watching. Tell a friend.